This is a proportion question from a sample pharmacy technician exam I see on the internet. I'm going to show you two ways to approach this question. First, I'm going to use the proportion formula. Then I'm going to use a similar but what I think is an easier method to remember. Firstly, to read the question. A 30 milliliters dose of nighttime cough suppressant contains 12.5 milligrams of doxylamine succinate. How many milligrams are in the entire 354 milliliter bottle? It's the how many milligrams part we have to solve, so we'll call this x milligrams. So in the first method, we're going to set up a proportion. The proportion is 30 milliliters grows or increases to 354 milliliters. So for the moment, we'll write these down with a dash between them. Now, over the 30 milliliters, we'll write the 12.5 milligrams that's mixed with it in the original mix. And we don't know how many milligrams of doxylamine succinate is mixed with 354 milliliters. So the unknown x goes over the 354 milliliters. Now, just to add in at this point, the reason why we put the unknown x on the upper line is that, as you'll see, there will be less moving of numbers around when it's put on the top line. Now, as you look at this, you'll see we've arranged one mix on one side and the other mix on the other side. So the mix on the left hand side will grow until it's the quantity of 354 milliliters, and the 12.5 milligrams will grow in the same proportion. So we've now laid this out in the same format as two equal fractions, so in the same way as a half would equal 10 over 20. Both the top and bottom lines grow in the same proportion. And if we look at this equation, a half equals 10 over 20, we can use cross multiplication to move any of those numbers from one side over to the other. So for example, if we had an unknown number over 20 that was equal to a half, we could use cross multiplication to take the 20 in the divide by position, move it over the equals into the multiply by position, so that would be able to give us what the unknown value is. So we're going to do the same thing with our proportion. We're going to put lines in between the bottom and the top, and we're going to squeeze the two dashes in together to make an equal sign. So therefore we've just turned it into two equal fractions. Having done that, we can cross multiply to get the unknown on its own. And as we already know, the answer is going to be in milligrams, so we can lose all the other units and just concentrate on the numbers. So, based on the proportion of 30 milliliters to 12.5 milligrams of doxylamine succinate, 147.5 milligrams would be used in a 354 milliliter bottle. Method 2 is one I prefer myself. It just sets the proportions up in a slightly different way, and for me a way that is easier to remember. I'm just going to call it keeping in lanes. And it's simply a case of keeping like terms with like in their own lanes, regardless of whether it's percentages, milligrams, milliliters or whatever. So, just to read the question again. A 30 milliliters dose of nighttime cough suppressant contains 12.5 milligrams of doxylamine succinate. How many milligrams are in the entire 354 milliliter bottle? So even if you can't remember any formulas, just keep like terms over like. So to start, I'm going to create two imaginary lanes. And we'll keep like terms in each lane, so it'll be milliliters in one lane and milligrams in the other lane. So the 30 milliliters mix has 12.5 milligrams of doxylamine succinate. And we have to find out what the 354 milliliter mix is. So we'll put that in the milliliter lane, and we'll have the x opposite in the milligram lane. Now we're at the stage which is very similar to the previous setup. We know that the top line, 354 milliliters to an unknown weight of milligrams, has to stick to the same proportion as the bottom line, the 30 milliliters to 12.5 milligrams, in order to keep to the same mixture. And when it does, you'll note that both sides are the same as two equal fractions. So therefore, as we've seen, we can cross multiply to get the unknown quantity on its own. And you'll see at the moment both arrangements are very much the same. We have the 12.5 being moved across the equals to be multiplied by the 354, and on the left hand side we have the 354 being moved across the equals to be multiplied by the 12.5. And lastly, to add, you can do the multiplication or division in any order, you still get the same answer.